It's early morning, April 21st, Saturday, the year 2007. Most of you will know that this has been a very heavy week, a difficult week for all of us. A very violent week. We know and we've seen about and we've read about the enormous atrocities going on there in Turkey. Over 100 people have been killed. In Virginia Tech, Virginia, there in the United States, that young man that went in and shot up over 30 young students in the classrooms and also in the residence hall. And yet there's one piece of violence you probably haven't heard about. On Wednesday of this week, on the 18th, 3 Christian men were killed horrendously, had their throats slit, in the city of Matalya, central Turkey. 2 of the men were Turks, 1 was a German. Their names were Necati Aydin, Ugur Yüksel. The German's name was Tilman Geske. Now, why do I bring this up? Again, in a week that's been so horrendously violent, why do I talk about more violence? The reason's very simple. My family knew 2 of these men. In fact, I've seen Necati Aydin on a video. He played the part of Jesus Christ a number of years ago in a play called The Passion of Jesus Christ. And in that play, which was performed in Izmir, in Ankara, and also in Istanbul, in front of thousands of people, put onto a CD, I've seen the CD, he not only plays it well, but at the very end of the play, where he is being crucified on the cross, he acts out what Jesus did on the cross. It's rather ironic to think, because what happened on the cross there to his Lord and Savior, in that what he acted out a few years ago, in some ways is repeated just this last week on Wednesday, when they bound, instead of trussing him on the cross, they trussed him on a chair, binding his hands and feet behind him. And then they started, and rather than stabbing him in the side like Jesus got stabbed, he got stabbed all over, and then he had his throat slit to end his life. But it's interesting, because the reaction of the family to what has happened on Wednesday is similar to the reaction of Christ on the cross. Necati, when he was on the cross, and as he was looking down at those who was persecuting him, he repeated the words of Jesus Christ and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And in the same way, the wife of Necati Aydin, her name is Semsa, repeated those same words on television. So did the wife of Tilman. Her name is Suzanne, also German. She forgave those who had killed her husband. And that's what we're called to do as Christians. Certainly, it's been hard looking at the news. It's been difficult looking at all this violence. Especially hard when it's close to home, as it is in the case of Necati and Tilman. People my family knows. It makes it personal. Our initial reaction is anger. Our initial action is confusion. Our initial reaction is, why? Where is this coming from? Why did they get killed in this way? What was their crime? Their crime? They were printing Bibles and giving them out freely. That was their crime. But take a look at the reaction of their wives. In forgiving them, they are basically following the example of their Christ. And just as Necati had done so on the cross, and did so in a much smaller way by giving his life last Wednesday, their wives represented what Christ did on the cross in their reaction to the killers. It's difficult to talk about it. But if there's any silver lining in this whole story, it's that I have a hope. So does Necati and Tilman and Ugur have a hope. You see, they're dead, yes. They died a very violent life. I'm sorry, a very violent way. But they're not completely dead. They're still alive. Because all of us who love Jesus Christ and follow and accept what he did on the cross, as Necati so well portrayed a few years ago, if we accept what Jesus Christ did on the cross, we also have a hope. We know, in fact, more than a hope, we have an assurance of where we're going after death. I know exactly where Necati is. I know exactly where Tilman is. And I know exactly where Ugur is tonight. All 3 of them are with their Lord and Savior. They have returned home. They are there waiting at his side, waiting for the rest of us. That's the assurance that they had. That's the assurance that they were portraying. That's the assurance that they were basically exemplifying in their own lives as they printed those Bibles so that you could also have the same hope. There's no reason for us to use violence in what we do or say. There's no reason for us to use violence, one religion against the other. But what we can do and what we should do is do what Jesus Christ did. Forgive, move on, and know that those of us who accept what Christ did on the cross, we have a hope, we have an assurance that we will be with him. I thank God for these three men, and I thank God for their faith. That kind of faith you can have as well. That kind of assurance you can have as well. I wish you would. This is Jay then, with a heavy heart, over and out.